Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make a very simple dessert. It's going to be a lemon posset tart with a hazelnut pastry crust. So it's very easy to make. It takes a little bit of time because the posset has to set. Now, posset, for those who don't know, is simply whipped double cream or heavy cream with sugar added to it and lemon juice and some lemon zest. So you boil the cream with the sugar and the lemon zest, and then if you want to, you can strain out the zest after you've boiled the mixture. Then you add in the lemon juice, stir it around and let it set, and you can put it into individual serving dishes if you want to. I'm going to put mine into a tart crust. But again, if you don't want to do a tart crust but you still like the idea of the hazelnut pastry, you can make little biscuits or cookies with the pastry crust instead. So it's easy, but it takes time, as I say. And I'll go on to the ingredients. So before I go on to the ingredients, just let me say that I saw this idea for a recipe in Ocado's magazine and it looked very good, and I've made lemon posset before, so I thought, well, I'll do it like this. Now, if you don't have ground hazelnuts, and I've ground my own here, then you can use ground almonds and maybe add just a little drop of almond extract to give them that extra flavour, because hazelnuts have a lovely rich flavour. Again, if you don't have ground hazelnuts, you could grind your own down to about this texture. You don't want to go much further than that because it will start to turn into a paste. But then when you put the dry ingredients into the food processor, you can blitz them more, and it will be the ground hazelnuts will actually become a little bit finer. So for the pastry, I have 140 grams, which is 1 cup minus 1 tablespoon, based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup of plain flour. Then I have 50 grams of ground hazelnuts, and mine were roasted before I ground them. I have, and that 50 grams is about half a cup. I have 7 tablespoons, 100 grams of unsalted butter. Then I have a quarter of a cup, 50 grams of caster sugar. I have 1 medium egg, which is separated into yolk and white. I have about 1 tablespoon of water. I may not need it all, I may need a little bit more, but we'll see. That's to bring the dough together. And then for the actual posset, I have 600 millilitres of cream, which is 2 cups plus a third of a cup and 4 teaspoons. I have the zest from 3 lemons. I have 100 millilitres, which is a third of a cup plus 1.5 tablespoons of lemon juice, and that came from about 1.5 of those 3 lemons. And then I have 3/4 of a cup, 150 grams of caster sugar. And that's all the ingredients we need. So the first thing I'm going to do is to make the pastry, and that's going to go into a 23 centimetre, a 9-inch fluted tart tin that has a loose bottom like that. So into a food processor, and for this I'm using the processor bowl of my immersion blender. I'm going to put my flour and the sugar and the ground hazelnuts and I'm going to process those or blitz them just for a short while. That will actually grind the hazelnuts slightly finer without it turning into a paste because of the other ingredients. And that's ground the hazelnuts much finer now. So I'm going to put my cold butter in. And I'll just give that a little bit of a stir to get it coated, as I always do. You may need to scrape your side of your processor bowl down as you do this, but it doesn't matter. So then I'm going to pulse this until it turns into a fine breadcrumb like texture. And that's good. And that's actually just beginning to come together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my egg yolk in. And about half of my water. And I'm going to pulse that until it starts to clump, adding the rest of the water if I need it. So with only 15 or so pulses, my dough has clumped together very nicely like that. So that's ready to work with now. So my dough is nice and soft, as you can see. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that onto the base of my 23 centimetre tart tin, and I'm simply going to press it down and then all up the sides. So I've actually pressed that dough around the centre and up the sides, and I cut a bit off the centre bit and spread it around the sides to make it easier. But you can do it any way you want. You could potentially cut it into 2/3 and 1/3, line the sides with 1/3 and then put the 2/3 in the centre and press it out. So that's looking good like that, and I'm going to put that into the fridge and I'm going to chill it for 30 minutes. And during that 30 minutes I'm going to preheat my oven to 190 Celsius, that's 170 Celsius with a fan, 375 Fahrenheit. Then I'll come back and we'll prepare this case for blind baking. So my pastry has chilled in the fridge for 30 minutes and my oven is preheated. So I'm going to take a fork and I'm going to prick all over the base of the pastry. And then I'm going to take some parchment paper and put it onto the base. And I've scrunched the parchment paper up so that it's easier to fit in like that. And I'm going to pour my ceramic baking beans onto that parchment paper. If you don't have baking beans, you can use dried beans or rice or pasta to weight it down like that. And then I'm going to put that into the oven and I'm going to bake it for 15 minutes. And after 15 minutes, I'll take it out of the oven and remove the baking beans and the parchment paper, and I will brush all over the surface of the pastry with the white of the egg that we separated out from the yolk earlier, and I'll put it back in the oven and bake it for a further 10 minutes. That will create a nice seal ready for the posset to go on when that's made. So I'll come back with you after this has baked and has had the egg white and baked again, and then we'll go on to make the posset. I baked the pastry tart case for 15 minutes. Then I took it out of the oven, took the beans and the paper out, and I brushed the egg white all over the surface and put it back in the oven for a further 10 minutes. So this is what it looks like now, fully baked, and it's beginning to cool down. So I'm going to set that to one side, and we'll go on to make the posset. And for the posset, it's very, very simple. You simply put the 600 millilitres of cream into a saucepan with the lemon zest and the sugar, and then you stir those around. I'm just going to scrape the rest of the cream out. And as I mentioned earlier, you can leave the lemon zest in the finished posset, but I prefer to strain it to take it out. So with that mixed in, I'm going to put that onto the heat, and I'm going to bring it to the boil. And then once it's come to the boil, I'm stirring it all the time as the sugar dissolves. And once it's come to the boil, I'm going to continue to boil it for 5 minutes. And if it seems to be rising up and it's going to overflow, just quickly take it off the heat and then put it back on. But you need to get this to a decent boil, if you possibly can, for 5 minutes. And you don't need to see that, but I will do that, and then I'll come back and show you how we actually finish it all off to make the posset. So I boiled the cream with the sugar and the lemon zest for 5 minutes once it came to the boil, stirring all the time. And what I'm going to do now, straight away while it's hot, is I'm going to strain that into a jug to remove the lemon zest. So that's good. And I'm just going to leave that for a few minutes, and then we're going to add the lemon juice in and stir it around and watch it as it thickens. So with the strained cream and sugar mixture cooling, I'm going to pour in the lemon juice, and I'm going to stir that around, and it should start to thicken and set up. And yes, I can feel that that's thickened up quite a bit already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that to cool down, and once it's cooled down, it will be poured into the tart case and then refrigerated for at least 4 hours until it sets completely. So I've let the posset cool down quite a bit. It's slightly warm, but I think it's good enough. And I'm going to pour it into the tart case. And where you can see some little lumps, that's just where a slight skin has formed, but it's not really a skin, it's just slightly firmer than the rest of it. And I'm going to put that into the fridge, and I'm going to chill it for at least 4 hours until it's completely set up, and you can chill it overnight as well if you want to. So I will leave that. I will actually cover it. I have a plastic lid that I can cover it with, and I will let it set up completely, and once it's done that, I'll come back and we'll have a taste of it. So I refrigerated the lemon posset tart with the hazelnut crust, and it's been in the fridge for about 5 hours. It's set up very nicely, and I've taken a slice out of it. So this is what it looks like, and it baked very, very nicely indeed. And there's the slice that I took out. It cuts nicely, it's set firm. So I'll have a taste of it. It's such a simple dessert. The posset is so easy to make with just 3 ingredients, and the crust isn't difficult to make. It does take a lot of time, but it tastes so good. Silky smooth lemon flavour, and then the lovely nutty flavour of the crust. They go perfectly together. So that's going to be it for this recipe. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for this recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well. And I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.